This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I will be welcoming Elisa Jordan. Elisa is an old Hollywood historian. She has written a book about Marilyn Monroe called Hello Norma Jean, the Marilyn Monroe You Didn't Know. And she has a tour in Los Angeles called LA Woman Tours. And she has a great podcast called All Things Marilyn with a co-host. And it's available on Spotify and Apple and all the podcasting platform downloads. And we're going to downloading platforms, and we're going to talk about all of that stuff today. And I can't wait. We're going to nerd out on old Hollywood and talk about Marilyn and all that stuff. I had heard her on Pleasant Gaming's podcast a few months ago, and I thought, oh, I love her laugh, I love her energy. I will definitely reach out. So it's going to be a great conversation today. Also, happy birthday, Steven Spielberg, the master of fantasy. Need I say more? Also, on Christmas Eve, Sunday, December 24th at midnight, I will be dropping my interview with Tracy Wells, who played Heather Owens on Mr. Belvedere. And she played one of Corey Feldman's classmates in Gremlins. That's my Christmas gift to you, and it was a fun one. Then at midnight on Christmas Day, Monday, December 25th, I will drop another Ask Tommy, where I answer frequently asked questions from listeners and guests. Then I will be dropping my full conversation with Karen Richmond from my fifth anniversary show last year. Why? Because it's hilariously funny. Karen is one of my favorite people. Sadly, I had to cut it down to 20 minutes, when I did the anniversary show last year, the 3-part video. And it's the 35th anniversary of A Very Brady Christmas. And even though I couldn't find a guest from it this year, I thought this is the next best thing. Though we don't talk about it in this episode, we talk about it in episode 331 from 5 years ago for the 30th anniversary. So yeah, here is my interview with Elisa Jordan.
Hello?
Hey Elisa, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, this is such a great honor. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, going back in time, what was the first old Hollywood movie that impacted you?
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
No kidding.
That's an easy one.
Wow. Yeah, the first one for me was The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. My brother and I mean, this is kind of dating myself, but my brother and I used to watch that every year when it would come on television.
Oh, yeah.
Because this was before, DVDs and even VHS, so we would wait for it when it would air once a year, and we would build a tent in the living room and watch it.
Oh, yeah, that's, it was during, Easter, Thanksgiving on CBS?
Yeah, and we'd sit through the commercials and everything, and that's when we would get our snacks.
Yeah, when it was on CBS in March of 1989, we had it on tape.
Yeah, by then you have it on tape, and that was really special too. We got it on VHS, but those early years of watching The Wizard of Oz once a year, that was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. Just like they would play The Sound of Music on NBC on Easter as well.
Well, that and I was also really into the Disney movies that they would release every 7 years on the big screen. They don't do that anymore, and I wish that they did, because they were intended to be seen on the big screen.
I know. You think that they would do it again, considering the hole that they're in,
Well, yeah.
Which is bizarre. What genre of old Hollywood do you gravitate toward the most?
I don't really have a genre. I just kind of like individual movies. I do love film noir.
Yeah.
And, I love the old Hollywood bombshells because I am influenced by Marilyn, but I just kind of like what's ever good. I like the gangster films, those old Warner Brothers gangster films. I love those.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the musicals. I like some of the high glam comedies. I'm just kind of an old Hollywood nerd.
Same here. Yeah, I'm a huge noir guy. I love the I love The Big Sleep. It's my favorite noir
Oh,
movie.
yeah. That's a great one.
Yeah. And the Tyrone Power one, Nightmare Alley. That movie predicted the future with social media influencer, con artists, and snake oilmen.
Well, that's the thing about a lot of these movies. They kind of do predict the future. And one of the things that I love about the old movies, and I'm not saying we don't have that with newer movies, because we'll look back one day and say, oh, look at that. Yeah. But with the older movies, because they had so many restraints in terms of what they could or could not do, it kind of forced the writers to get creative and really intellectual. And it's really fun to go back and see that.
Well, because there was no internet then, I mean, people had more life experience, I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Warner Brothers gangster movies, Cagney, his very first one, Public Enemy, that one still holds up.
Well, that and, Jean Harlow's in that.
Yeah. Jean Harlow's right at the top of, the talkie era.
Yeah, she's just learning how to act.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge Hitchcock guy. Do you like?
Oh,
Do you like Hitchcock?
I do. Now, I have to tell you, I saw The Birds as a kid, and it scared me so bad. I still haven't rewatched it, and I really should watch it as an adult because I know it wouldn't be nearly as scary. But I remember, again, my brother and I watching movies on television. He wanted to watch it because he was older, and he liked scarier movies. And all I remember is that scene where the guy has his eyes pecked out. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And just freaking out, like, for a little girl that was like, ah, that's terrible. And it really traumatized me.
Yeah, that can be pretty traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Vertigo, North by Northwest, Rear Window, Psycho, The Birds.
I love all those. And here in LA, we have a film program every summer. It's in June, I think, called Last Remaining Seats that the Los Angeles Conservancy puts on.
Right.
And they play a classic film in an old theater. And this past summer, they did Vertigo, and it was so much fun to see on the big screen.
Oh, loved it. Yeah, I remember I first became aware of that movie when they did the 40th anniversary re-release in 98. They, restored it, and just made it look good and stuff. And I just love anything that Jimmy Stewart's in general.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He's one of the best. Yeah. So who are your old favorite, your favorite old Hollywood people besides Marilyn?
Besides Marilyn, so I love Jean Harlow. She's right up there. I am completely devoted to Carole Lombard. Not just because I love her movies and how she appears on screen. She's very funny, but I like her personality. She was completely unspoiled by fame, and she was just a lot of fun. People liked her. She was funny. I also like Ava Gardner. I love Sharon Tate. And then for the guys, I think everyone likes, like Errol Flynn, Jimmy Stewart, Humphrey Bogart, and of course the king of Hollywood, Clark Gable. Everyone loves Clark Gable.
Oh, yeah. I love Natalie Wood, Jimmy Stewart, Cagney, Bogart, Cary Grant, Marie Windsor.
Yeah. Oh, what's funny is I was listening to one of your interviews with Kip Brown, and you mentioned that Natalie was your favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a woman who wrote one of one of the books about her life in the last few years about her drowning and stuff, and man, she comes down really hard on Robert Wagner. I'll tell you.
Oh, so what is her verdict?
That he definitely knows something, or he's guilty. One of the two. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. My main job is I'm a writer and editor, but I work the weekends at Warner Brothers as a tour guide,
Mm-hmm.
and I talk about old movies for a living there.
Mm-hmm.
But Natalie Wood, I get to talk about quite a bit because of Gypsy and Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah, I love those. West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
Miracle on 34th Street is my favorite Christmas movie, and I get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of surprised reactions from that because It's a Wonderful Life is supposed to be the definitive, old Hollywood Christmas movie.
See, you know what's funny is I've avoided a lot of those old Hollywood Christmas movies
Uh-huh.
just because I feel like it's expected of me to watch those. But a few years ago, a friend of mine took me to see White Christmas. She was appalled that I had avoided White Christmas. So it was playing on the big theater. One of the benefits of living in Los Angeles is you get to see old movies on the big screen. And she insisted that I go see White Christmas with her. And of course, it was wonderful, especially on the big screen.
I know a podcast host named Tammy Tucky. She's way
Mm-hmm.
younger than I am. She's been having a following since she was in her teens, and she boldly found the woman who plays Dean Jagger's daughter in White Christmas, and
Uh-huh.
found her and like called her and asked her if she would do an interview on her podcast. And I was like, wow, she's got more guts than I do. I'll tell you, and I have
But
guts. Go
I
ahead.
love it because we need their stories. You know, we need
Yeah.
their memories, and if you have any interest at all, it kind of adds to the depth of the movie, I think. It makes it more fun.
I think it does. One of the great gifts of the podcast world is that we've been able to find these people who had Zelig like moments in show business and have great stories to tell about being on the sets of movies and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a friend who I met at Warner Brothers, Kurt, and his uncle worked directly with Jack Warner. He started off as
Mm-hmm.
Jack Warner's personal driver,
Mm-hmm.
and then he got promoted and eventually worked his way up to like first assistant director, and that's actually a pretty high position. And his stories are great. Even though he was a kid, he was on the sets and listening and learning, and he actually got to meet Jack Warner and Betty Davis, and his memories are those of a little kid, but it's still really interesting to me, and it just reminds you that these were real people. It's as crazy as it sounds, you can forget that Betty Davis was a real person when all that you see of her is on a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you like Charlie Chaplin?
I do, although I almost hesitate to say that because I know Charlie Chaplin has a really strong following, and
Yeah.
they are just as knowledgeable at everything Charlie as I am with Marilyn. So
Yeah.
I don't want to give the impression that I'm an expert at Charlie Chaplin because I'm not,
No.
but I do find him really fun.
Well, it's funny because I've been telling the story a lot lately. When I was 3.5, my parents take me to the drive-in. My mom has to go back to the snack bar and yell at the person there. And there was this stand-up cardboard poster of Charlie Chaplin. It was a cookie ad. I think it was for Bagley's Cookies or something like that. And it was the first time I ever saw Charlie Chaplin. And I remember saying to my mom, "Hey, Mommy, I want a cookie like that man has." And she's like, "Shh, you don't get a cookie, okay? Your mother's very upset right now."
Oh, but you
Yeah.
know what's interesting about that is it shows how powerful the image is,
Yes.
even after all these years. And that was one thing that old Hollywood was the best at, is making images and making personas for people. Like, you never forget Charlie Chaplin once you see him. And I think
Right.
that's part of his magic is, you can't imitate him because there's only one.
Right.
And if you look a little bit like Charlie Chaplin, you're imitating Charlie Chaplin.
You're right. I think that Downey did a really good job of playing him, though.
Oh, he was brilliant because, I mean, I have mixed feelings on biopics right now, which I'll get into in a minute, but
course.
that was one of the early ones.
Yeah.
And, you think, like, who could portray Charlie Chaplin, because he's so special. He was unique. There was only one of them, and he really pulled it out for that one. But my thing about biopics now is they're so common.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go see a movie recently, and half the coming previews were for biopics, and it's kind of like, okay, you're just angling for Oscars now.
Yeah. Well, I think they all are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen some that are pretty good, and I've seen a lot of them that are bad. And I'm sure there's always politics when making them. That's why they turn out so bad, because but the family and the estate is like, no, that's not what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their place. It's just we're getting flooded right now.
Have you ever seen a Francis Farmer movie?
No, I have not. And I would love to, because I have a soft spot for Frances Farmer. And for the folks who are listening who may not know who she is, she was a really beautiful actress in the classic era, and she dated Clifford Odets for a while.
Right.
But she had some problems with mental health.
Right.
And then ended up having some trouble with the law. She was driving, this was during World War II, she was driving in a zone of Los Angeles where they had blackouts at night, and she was pulled over because her headlights were on. It was a safety issue. And that's what started the ball rolling. And then there's this famous story I love to debunk. There's this famous story that she is pulled out of the Knickerbocker Hotel kicking and screaming and naked, or half naked. And she was pulled out of the Knickerbocker Hotel by police kicking and screaming, but she's fully dressed. So I just want to give, some dignity back to Frances, because I think she's lost a lot of it because of those stories and, the movie that came out about her and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I love Jessica Lange's portrayal, even though it's not a completely accurate film. I just think she did a great job playing her. I just love it. I think it's a magical movie. The only one I saw from Frances Farmer was this one she did with Fred MacMurray called Exclusive for Paramount.
Oh yeah, I really do need to sit down and see those. She kind of got a little bit of name recognition in the mid-90s because Nirvana came out with a song that had her name in it. So my generation might know her from that, at least her name.
Absolutely. I think that's the first time I heard her name was in that song.
Yeah.
Would you agree that MGM's movies were very saccharine, whereas Warner Brothers was more ballsy and they took chances?
Oh, yeah, and that was intentional. I mean, in the 1930s and then going into the 1940s, we had the Great Depression, and then we went into World War II, so it was a tough time for a very long time. And in the 1930s, they weren't old then, but movies were an affordable escape. And all the movie studios made different kinds of movies, but then they had their specialties, and it was all about escape. So MGM had those glamorous comedies and those saccharine stories. We saw a lot of musicals from them and from Paramount. Universal had the monsters. And then Warner Brothers made a very real, intended branch out into the gangster films. And they were specifically trying to kind of connect with their audience because it was a rough time, and they figured their audiences would relate to that. And even more specifically, when folks are going through a rough time and there's not a lot of money in the community, they will make their own economy. And that's how a lot of organized crime gets started. So that's what they were showing, but they also prided themselves on not trying to glamorize crime. Which is why at the end of all of those movies, the bad guy loses. Crime doesn't pay. So they are trying to at least throw that in. But no, that was a very real effort that the Warner Brothers were trying to do, was they were trying to connect with their audiences by showing a grittier side of life, because they thought it would offer some sort of relief or connection to their audience,
Right.
whether they were gangsters or not. Everyone was going through a rough time. And that was how they handled the Depression and then later World War II.
It's hard to believe, too, that Columbia and Universal began as B movie studios. In fact, Louis B. Mayer would threaten to send Gable to Universal if he didn't do what he was told.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with It Happened One Night. Gable was in trouble for some reason. I forget why they were upset with him, and they sent him over to Columbia for It Happened One Night. Yeah. And he was miserable. Claudette Colbert was miserable, and then they swept the Oscars.
It is a masterpiece of a movie. It was a great suspension for Gable because it set the template for so many movies we've seen since, where the man and the woman hate each other, but yet they're in love with each other,
Oh, it's classic. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is so much fun, and you see the characters grow, and you can see them, trying to figure out how to interact with each other and grappling with their emotions, and at the same time, it's funny. It really is a masterpiece.
And legend has it, Chuck Jones got the idea for Bugs Bunny. The way that he chomps on a carrot was actually based on Clark Gable in that movie.
I've heard that too, and I believe it.
Yeah.
Because it sure does look like Clark Gable.
It sure does, yeah. So, when did your interest in writing begin?
Probably as a kid. My grandmother was... she was born in America, but her parents were English. And she was really stern about things like grammar and language and speaking well and things like that.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of a sickly kid, and I was really shy. So that's a recipe for staying inside and reading books. So I did a lot of that, watching movies, and I just kind of developed an interest from all of those things, reading books and not being able to go outside and play very much. And then my grandmother always correcting everyone's, speaking patterns. And it just kind of developed that way. And then when I was a teenager, one of the subjects I did okay in was English and writing. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just go into that because you don't really know what. At least I didn't really know what I wanted to be. And I thought, well, that's my best option. I'll go to college and be an English major. And then it started to just kind of snowball from there. I was going to a community college first, and I was thinking, like, how can I break into publishing? Because I knew that most of publishing was in New York, and I was in California. And I didn't know what to do, and I'd recently read an article with Henry Rollins.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked Henry Rollins okay, but, he has a lot of fans who are fanatics. I wasn't that, but I thought it was really interesting that he had a book company and he had kind of done everything on his own. It was all DIY. And he named his book company 2/13/61, which is his birthday. And my birthday is also 2/13, so it just kind of stuck out to me. So anyway, I was sitting in class one day like, there are no publishing companies in Los Angeles. What am I going to do? And I thought, I'll just work for Henry Rollins. He's in LA. And so then I just kind of, for the next couple of years, thought, it's okay, I'm going to get a job for Henry Rollins. And I ended up working for Henry Rollins. That's how I got my start in publishing. I was just in the office opening mail and sending mail out and answering the phone and that kind of thing. It was a really tiny operation, but that's how I broke into publishing.
Wow. Was it a good experience? What was he like? 'Cause I know he's kind of nuts.
No, it was a great experience. He wasn't there every day because he was always on tour. So my boss was actually Carol, and there was a guy in the office named Dave, and then we had another woman named Heidi who still works for him. But when he would come back, he was great to me. He was interested in the fact by this time I had transferred to a 4-year university. I was going to UCLA. And he wanted to know all about my classes. He would ask me about them. He loves Hemingway and Fitzgerald. And, I was taking a class in Hemingway and Fitzgerald. So we would have these long conversations and he would lend me books or recommend books to me. And, he would lend me jazz CDs because I didn't know anything about jazz. He was really engaged when he was there with me and really interested in my future and, what I was up to. He was very good to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. I love his stand-up comedy. He's so underrated as a stand-up comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And I just went and saw him perform, last year, I think, within the last year. And it was really fun to see him again because I used to go to his shows all the time when I worked for him, and I hadn't been in, a long time. So it was nice to see him again. He didn't recognize me when I first walked up, and then when he realized who I was, he's like, I haven't seen you in 130 years. It's like, I know, I'm all grown up now.
That is so awesome. So you wrote a book about Agnes Richards called Rockhaven Sanitarium. What sparked that book?
I did.
Yeah.
So I went there. It's kind of a Maryland connection. I found out that they were running tours, and I thought, well, I need to go see this place because Marilyn had placed her mother there. Marilyn's mother, Gladys, was schizophrenic. And, I didn't think anything of it other than I'm just going to go see this place. And I showed up for the tour. I don't know what I was expecting other than I guess I was expecting Cuckoo's Nest or something. I don't know. But when I arrived, there are no more patients there, but it was beautiful and not what I expected at all. It was a sanitarium for women, by women. And what I learned was Agnes Richards was a nurse, and she had been a psychiatric nurse starting like in World War I. And that's when we're starting to see and really take into account things like shell shock, what was then called shell shock, now PTSD.
Yep, shell shock.
And so she was working with soldiers coming home, and then she worked in hospitals, and she just started observing that when people were taken to a sanitarium, they were often scared. They would see these big, scary buildings, and it would look like a jail. A lot of times the people who were staying there were called inmates, and that scared not just them, but their family members. They didn't have nearly the amount of therapy that we have now. But she did notice some things when they were in a peaceful setting or had things to do. They recovered from their illnesses more quickly instead of retreating into their illnesses.
Right.
She also found out that women were especially vulnerable in co-ed hospitals because they might not have the ability or the capacity to fend off predatory male workers or other folks who were staying there, and that concerned her. So she opened up Rockhaven in 1923. So this is just 3 years after women got the right to vote. And it was for women, by women. So, I mean, the doctors were men in that era, but they weren't there all day, every day. Yeah. So she wanted a safe place where women wouldn't feel like they were going to be where women weren't going to be assaulted. And it also opened up career pathways for women in an era before the women's movement. And she even built in respect to the women who stayed there with the administrative details. So they weren't called inmates or patients. They were ladies or residents. So, they were the ladies of Rockhaven or the residents of Rockhaven. And she didn't want a big hospital type setting. So on her campus, it was little houses. And you would live in a little house. You had roommates, of course, but they would have a living room, bathrooms, bedrooms, and then the dining room looked like a dining room you would see at home, and it would feel like a family setting. It was safe. They had activities to keep their minds busy and active, and that way they were more likely to heal and go home. So I showed up thinking I'm just going to see where Gladys's room was, and I ended up falling in love with this property because, first of all, it's in danger. Like so many other places in the Los Angeles area, the land is so valuable. and the city wants to tear it down, and there's an active group trying to rescue the property. But I thought this is a landmark, a legitimate landmark for women's history, for mental health history, for Hollywood history, because, you know, Gladys was there, but some other actresses were there. Going back to, you know, one of your favorite movies, Wizard of Oz, that is where Billie Burke passed away. She was there for dementia. It was just...
I found out she was like 50 when she did The Wizard of Oz, and she's so gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, and Margaret Hamilton is younger, and she was the witch. But yeah, Rockhaven's just a really special place that did its best. It was the anti-cuckoo's nest, and it really did exist to help women get well, go back to their home lives. And you know, these days we have antidepressants to help, but when Rockhaven opened, there were no antidepressants, so they were working to help people get well. I realize I'm kind of babbling, but I get excited when I talk about it. But you know, like,
it's okay.
You know, things like postpartum depression, or you know, that kind of thing, or grief, might be treated with antidepressants now, and they didn't have that then, so they would go there for the best possible therapy available for the time and work on getting well.
Wow. And you know, it does tie into the Marilyn thing a little bit, because her mother was like a bipolar schizo, right?
She was paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of persecution, which is with schizophrenia, there are different ways that it can emerge, and paranoia is very common. And her particular outlet was religion, which is also very common for schizophrenia. So she focused on Christian Science. So she was very involved in Christian Science. And at Rockhaven, she was able to be left alone. She had been in state hospitals for a long time. And at Rockhaven, she was allowed to read her Bible and her Christian Science handbook and just, you know, kind of live there in peace and get treatment, you know, not nearly as good as we have now, but the best they had at the time.
Yeah.
And she was treated very well there. In fact, when Marilyn passed away, her will went into probate, and that process took many years. And Gladys's bill got behind a couple of years because taxes ate up most of what Marilyn's estate had. And Rockhaven let her stay there until the bill was cleared up. And eventually Marilyn's estate got caught up with the bill, but Rockhaven let her stay.
Yeah, I don't know if you've read April Viviv's book, Marilyn, A Day in the Life.
Yeah, she's one of my best friends.
Really?
Yeah.
She's been on the show twice.
Yeah, I love her. She is one of my favorite humans.
Yeah, and she's told me, you know, some toe curling stuff about Marilyn, and yeah, I mean, I interviewed an actress named Joy Carlin, and she was one of the early Second City performers with Ed Asner and Nichols and May, and she was in Lee Strasberg's class with Marilyn.
Okay.
And she told me, yeah, if you saw Marilyn in that class, you wouldn't even know it was her. She was very unglamorous, and she was very focused and wanting to study acting because she appreciated the craft.
Yeah, she was. And she knew that she kind of saw the future. She knew that method acting was really popular at the time, and for good reason. Like, you know, I think you and I have kind of connected with the old movies, but if you watch a movie called Four Daughters with John Garfield, and again, Warner Brothers, but he's the first method actor to really go to Hollywood.
Body and soul.
And he's acting in that movie, and he's starting to bring in some of those method techniques, and it's very different than the prior style, which was based on first stage and then silent movies when everything is overacted because it needed to be. And so they transitioned with that to sound movies. And John Garfield starts to create a stir, like, no, we need more natural performances. And then it really breaks open with Marlon Brando. But Marilyn sees all of this happening. She dated Elia Kazan when he was on the West Coast and early in her career, and she hears about Lee Strasberg and the Actors Studio and what's going on with the method, because Kazan co-founded the Actors Studio. So she wanted to be a part of that, and she took it very seriously.
Yeah, my nana, she lived next door to Joe DiMaggio growing up in North Beach.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she didn't care about sports, but she thought of him. She thought of him as the cute Italian boy next door.
I think that might be the first time I've heard him referred to as cute, but okay.
They're the same age, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I forgot to bring this up to April when I talked to her about Marilyn earlier this year. But in the early '50s, there was a guy. He was on a game show, and he said that he'd love to go on a date with Marilyn, and I think he won it as a prize. And then that became the inspiration behind that Jason Priestley movie, Calendar Girl. Do you know about that, and if the date ever happened?
I don't know about that. She might know more. Whatever April tells you, go with, because no one is better at research than she is. But I have not heard that. So I don't know. But Calendar Girl's a very cute movie.
It is. It is. I remember when it first came out, too. That was way before, celebrity stalkers and paparazzis and all that stuff. It was a much more innocent time.
Yeah.
I heard you say that on Pleasant's podcast that you don't like the Netflix biopic Blonde. Why not?
Oh, I don't. And it's weird that you call it a biopic, because a lot of people are. And if you ask Joyce Carol Oates, she'll say, "Oh no, it's fiction." And one of my problems is it is fiction.
Yeah.
So don't believe anything you see in it. But a lot of people think that it's real, but it's just really disrespectful. It not only didn't happen, but people think a lot of what you see did happen. But just seeing Marilyn sitting on a toilet and performing oral sex on the president, and it's a graphic scene. It's like borderline porn.
I thought that was a little disrespectful. Yes.
Yeah, not just to her, but to him too.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like Joyce Carol Oates and Andrew Dominic are hiding behind the fiction thing. Like, they've both said things like, "This is an amazing story. It deserves to be told." And then when people will say, "But none of this happened. Why are you saying it deserves to be told?" But it's fiction. So I feel like they're trying to play it from both sides. And it's like, no, you can't do that. So I feel like they've been not only disrespectful, but disingenuous in how they present it. And I will say I give April all the credit in the world for this, because for those of you familiar with Andrew Dominic's career, he directed, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on the name. How embarrassing. The Jesse James movie.
Jesse... I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, don't you hate it when your brain farts at the wrong time?
Yeah.
But anyway, she came up with The Assassination of Marilyn Monroe by the Coward Andrew Dominic, which is a play on the movie he directed. Now I have to look it up because it's...
Yeah. I mean,
The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. There it is. Oh my God. So she kind of turned that around on him and calls Blonde The Assassination of Marilyn Monroe by the Coward Andrew Dominic, which I thought was brilliant. And I told her that. So April gets all the credit in the world, but I like using it.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it was, I love the actress's performance. I thought she was one of the better Marilyns that we've seen in quite a while. I love the visuals. I thought that they were beautiful, very good production values. My favorite part was when she was having a threesome with those two guys, and it morphed into it morphed into a waterfall. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, and that's like that was supposed to be Edward G. Robinson Jr. and Charlie Chaplin Jr.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's kind of disrespectful to their memories too. But what are you gonna do?
That drove me crazy. But like the surface of things, I think they had great ideas. They were just badly executed.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, there were things about the movie I liked. I thought the production values were great. The costumes were incredible. The sets were incredible. So in that regard, they really did their homework. It was just a lousy script, and the book is awful. I mean, for me. Now I'm coming at it as a Marilyn fan. Other people might not think so, and I know it won a lot of awards, but I mean, it almost feels like Joyce Carol Oates has some sort of axe to grind with someone.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Marilyn movies. It's the 70th anniversary of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and I talked with Christina Rice, as you know, about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a masterpiece. What are your thoughts on it now that you look back as the first Hollywood movie that impacted you?
I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and Christina will say it's the greatest buddy movie of all time. I realize I'm biased, but I think so too. I just saw it again with some friends, not on a big screen, but a bigger screen. And it is so much fun. It is so well written and funny and insightful. You never know if Lorelai really is the blonde idiot that she's supposed to be presented as, or if she's a genius. It combines everything that you want in a good comedy. It has a great cast, great songs, great dialogue. It's witty, it's insightful, and again, I'm biased, but I just can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, I said this to Christina as well. I think the movie kind of gets written off as, oh, this is the movie that Madonna's copying Marilyn in the Material Girl video for. I mean, that's how I found out about the movie when I was a kid. But I love it, and it's Howard Hawks. I love a lot of his movies, like The Big Sleep, as I mentioned before, and I was happy to find out that Marilyn and Jane got along and that there was no rivalry.
No, and it was similar with How to Marry a Millionaire, which came out the same year. All the ladies got along. I think Betty Grable and Lauren Bacall realized that Marilyn had some issues brewing, but kind of like Jane Russell, they were very kind to her about it, and they all got along great, and you can see the chemistry in that film as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one too. I think that it was probably the best use of Lauren Bacall during that era. In the Bogey era.
Yeah, I love Lauren Bacall. I like all of them.
I'm friends with an actress who is distantly related to Howard Hawks' wife Slim, who was the bassist for Lauren Bacall's characters.
Yeah, I read that she was the basis for those characters.
Yep. Holly Fields, she was a child actress in the 80s. Mm-hmm. She's a friend of mine. Now, April told me she does not like River of No Return. What do you think about it?
It's okay. It's okay. It's not her best film, but it's certainly not the worst. One of my problems with that film is, and this is not her fault, it's just the era. Like, at one point, Robert Mitchum almost sexually assaults her, and then by the end, they're all lovey-dovey, and they ride off into the sunset together. Yeah. But again, that's not her fault. And this is me being nitpicky, and I don't know why it drives me crazy, and all of my friends have told me to let it go. Mm-hmm. But for a movie in the Gold Rush era, she's wearing jeans. and women wouldn't have been wearing jeans, and it's not real life, it's not a documentary. I need to let it go. She looks cute in jeans. But it's just like, she would have been wearing that.
I know I've seen certain movies where I'm like, they didn't wear that or they didn't talk like that back then.
Mm-hmm.
I know
And
exactly.
that's just me being nitpicky, and I take responsibility for that one. But it's okay. And Marilyn didn't like the movie herself.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
I think it's one of Mitchum's finest moments. This was, post RKO, and he became a free agent, and he started doing higher quality films. He can't sing worth a shit, but it's charming.
That's okay. For me, you don't go to Robert Mitchum movies to see him sing. That's not his jam,
Exactly. My favorite movie of hers will always be The 7-Year Itch, because
I love that. Yeah.
I think she's never had a comedic character be so sweet, endearing, and human underneath the dumb blonde guys. When she kisses Tom Yule on the cheek at the end and says, Don't wipe it off. If your wife asks you what it is, tell her she has cherry pits in her head." I love that. It brings a tear to my eye every time. I'm very sensitive. It doesn't take much to make me cry during sentimentality in movies. I just love that. And the way that she waves goodbye at the end, I love it.
But again, starting with great source material. Gentlemen Prefer Blonde started with great source material, so that helps too.
Yeah, and then also, too, a lot of people are purists of the stage play, which I have never seen, but I heard it was much more body, and you couldn't get away with the bodiness in the movie at that time in 1955. And it was the only movie Billy Wilder made for 20th Century Fox, just like North by Northwest was Hitchcock's only MGM movie, which I find interesting.
Well, that's true. They had to censor the film. I've never seen the play either, because it's just never been performed anywhere that I know of.
Yeah.
Because I would love to go see it, but it is bawdier, and one of the things they had to cut out is it's very explicit about the girl, and that's her character's name, and the Tom Yule character having an affair, and he's racked with guilt over the affair, and they couldn't show that in the movies back then, so it just kind of implies that maybe there was something, or he's tempted, that kind of thing. And they felt like they had to cut the funniest lines out of the movie from the play, but whatever they did, it worked magic, because that's a great film, and she's so cute in it, and there's a depth to her, and this is why Marilyn's dumb blonde characters work still. There's a depth to her. Like, she's really not that dumb after all. And I know she got sick of playing those roles, and I get why, but she brings something to them that no one else was able to bring to them.
Yes, and she's the ultimate dream girl in that movie. And she's not, and she's not there for eye candy per se. She's actually acting, and she just brings that character to life. And it's funny, her big toe gets stuck in the water faucet.
Yeah.
That was recycled later on the Dick Van Dyke Show with Mary Tyler Moore.
Well, and that scene was censored, because she's talking to the plumber, and he drops the wrench in the bathtub, and he reaches into the bathtub and pulls it out, and they had to cut that part out.
Oh. Well, it's fine just the way it is.
Yeah.
Then there's Bus Stop.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Bus Stop. I don't know what your feelings are. I love her in it, but I think Don Murray's performance is a little over the top at times, but by the end, when they have their moment together, I think both are superb. So that kind of makes up for it.
I think the chemistry between them is good. I heard Don Murray say that, when he got that movie, he had spent like 5 years rejecting Hollywood movies. And so after he read that script, someone told him, you better do it now. Otherwise, you're not going to have another chance. And so he did it, and then he did everything his way in Hollywood.
Yeah. And again, it's the times. It's not Marilyn's fault or the movie's fault, but in that movie, he stalks her, assaults her, kidnaps her, kind of manhandles her, and then she's like, oh, I would go anywhere in the world with you. And any real woman would be like, get away from me.
Yes.
You pig. But in the 50s, that's what was considered a romantic film. And I get it. I put it in context, but the play is also very different,
You gotta, I'm friends with Julia Montgomery from Revenge of the Nerds, and there's that famous scene where she's raped by Robert Carradine as Darth Vader, and then she falls in love with him. Her and I both feel that, she should have had some dialogue earlier in the movie that hinted that she liked him, and then otherwise people wouldn't take it so out of context. But the way I frame it, it's like an old movie from way back when. That's what they did then,
Yeah, and who doesn't love I Love Lucy? I Love Lucy, but even that can be a little startling when you watch it through 21st century eyes, where Ricky gets mad at Lucy and spanks her. It's like, whoa. But it was over the top comedy. It was the early 1950s, and it was meant to be fun. So you kind of have to take a step back, like, okay, let's put this in context. This is something we wouldn't do now, and try to look at it that way.
I mean, even when Cary Grant hits Katharine Hepburn at the beginning of the Philadelphia Story, it's pretty over the top and funny, And Some Like It Hot. I remember April told me that Marilyn couldn't stand Tony Curtis, and he told people for years that they slept together.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They didn't get along. Like, really didn't get along. And to be fair, Marilyn was going through a rough time, and that resulted in not great behavior on the set. She was late all the time. She could be kind of moody. She was also pregnant, so that added to, I think, some of her difficulties, because she had trouble carrying a baby to term, and she never did carry a baby to term, so that was really emotional for her. So it wasn't easy to work with her, and Tony Curtis didn't handle that with a lot of grace. Jack Lemmon did. Jack Lemmon knew she was difficult to work with, but just kind of gave Marilyn the space she needed to do what she had to do for her performance. Tony Curtis was not nearly as gracious, and there was one day after watching the dailies that he stood up and on his way out said, kissing Marilyn's like kissing Hitler. It was after with that scene where they make out, and Jack Lemmon saw it. It did happen, and he kind of muttered like kissing Hitler or something like that. And it eventually got back to Marilyn, and of course she was very hurt. Who wants to be compared to Hitler? And I think because Marilyn's popularity grew in the years after her death, Tony Curtis got a lot of blowback. And so I'm guessing, but it's an educated guess, that he wrote his book that they had an affair, and that the baby she was carrying was actually his, to kind of make up for what he said. Like, no, that was just a joke. Like, oh, it's like kissing Hitler. And he tried to create this romance, which very clearly did not happen. By all accounts, they didn't like each other. They didn't communicate well on the set with each other. So there was no affair. And I think that was his way of trying to make up for the way he talked about her.
Yeah. I mean, I'm finding out more and more all the time what a monster Tony Curtis was. And I think that he was a better actor than people gave him credit for,
Yeah, I have no problems with his performances or his acting. It's important to separate the artist from the art. Because a lot of people don't like Marilyn's behavior on some of her sets, but the performances she turned in were outstanding. Like, she was difficult to work with sometimes, especially later in life. After she starts working with Lee Strasberg, she goes in a new direction for her acting, but the Strasbergs really emphasized digging into your past trauma to give you a more authentic performance. And for some people, that was a disaster. And Marilyn Monroe was one of them. She dug into her past traumas from childhood, but without any help to overcome them. Right. So it just opened up all these wounds and made her worse in her personal life. Right. So, I'm capable of separating her from her performances, and you have to do the same thing for people. Like with Tony Curtis, he's a great actor, but probably not someone you'd want to be friends with.
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon, on the other hand, I would love to be best friends with.
Yeah, he was so good at comedy and drama.
And he was just a fun, cool guy. Like what he would do to unwind. And I know this because my friend Lorraine is the world's biggest Jack Lemmon fan, and she tells me all about him. But, to unwind between takes, he would do things like play the piano, like healthier outlets.
How long did it take to write the book?
A couple of years. Mm-hmm. I've basically been researching my whole life. Yeah. Because once I started as a kid, I just never stopped researching her. But actively writing the book took a couple of years. And it was really hard because I got the book deal and then the pandemic broke out. Right. And you would think that being stuck at home would make it easier to write. But I was just one of those people who kind of got stuck in that existential crisis. So it was really hard for me. And then all the research libraries closed and stayed closed up until basically when I turned the book into the publisher. And April, going back to April, she had some of the research that I needed, and she very graciously shared whatever it was that I needed, and if she had it, she would share it with me. So I give her a lot of credit for that because I couldn't go get it myself.
Yeah. Did you talk to anybody that Marilyn knew?
No, so many of them are gone. The closest I've come would be, people who had very small places in her life, like
Scott Monroe.
No, I've never talked to him. I would be very careful about his stories, to be honest with you.
Yes.
But, there was a hairdresser who did her hair a couple of times, not her normal hairdresser, or, people who, they were the kid of a producer and that kind of thing. I did interview Susan Bernard once at length. Mostly about her dad. Her dad was Bernard of Hollywood and a great photographer of old Hollywood, but I was mostly interested in Marilyn stuff, and she has memories of Marilyn, but she's very little. Joshua Green, who's the son of Marilyn's business partner, Milton Green, and again, he remembers Marilyn, but was very little. Yeah. So it's hard to get a connection. She's been gone for over 60 years. So that's why firsthand accounts or documents are so important. I looked at a lot of, receipts and legal documents and that kind of thing.
Right. So I listened to All Things Marilyn. It's great.
Oh, thanks.
What sparked this idea?
I came up with the idea a couple of years ago, and I didn't have the courage to ask Scott if he wanted to do that with me. Scott is also one of my best friends. And I finally said, what do you think about maybe doing a podcast, you and me? And he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then it took a while to get it off the ground because it's kind of like, oh, we should get together sometime. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then months go by and it's like, oh yeah, we were going to get together kind of a thing. And we finally started doing that. And it was right around the time the whole Happy Birthday, Mr. President dress scandal happened and Blonde was coming out. We realized, okay, now is the time. Marilyn needs someone on her side to give the truth and be honest. And hopefully people will listen.
Mm-hmm. I like the one you did with Christina.
Oh yeah, she was a lot of fun and really informative. I liked talking to Christina a lot.
Yeah, she's great. Do you know Carrie Specht?
No, I don't.
She's a fantastic old Hollywood historian. You should have her
Mm-hmm.
on. She's
Okay.
got a great laugh, and she's worked in the business, and she's got stories, and
Okay.
she's fantastic. Do you know Laurie Jacobson?
I know of her.
Yeah.
I've never met her.
She's like a mentor to me, one of my
Mm-hmm.
biggest supporters in the world. She's not only an old Hollywood historian, she's married to Timmy from Lassie, and
Oh.
she, John Provost, she manages all of his former child star friends, and she's like, connected me with a lot of them, like Jimmy Hunt from Invaders from Mars, and
Uh-huh.
Beverly Washburn from Old Yeller is a good friend, and Sharon from the Musketeers. A lot of great people, and she'll tell me who's worth my time and who isn't. You'd be surprised.
Oh, good.
You'd be surprised who's a jerk from that era. I tell you.
That's sad to hear, but yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, she's great. And you do this tour, LA Woman Tours. How long have you been doing that for?
I started that in 2012, and now that COVID's finally ending, I'm going to try to get it back up and running. And I was doing tours of Marilyn Monroe sites, Jean Harlow sites, which I would co-host with Daryl Rooney, who is a Jean Harlow historian. I was doing the Doors and then rock and roll.
Yeah, and you named it after the Doors song.
I did. So I got the idea to do a Marilyn Monroe tour because at the time I was freelance writing and I was answering questions online about Marilyn, and I was also writing original content about her in my spare time. And I realized a lot of people want to know about Marilyn, but they have misinformation. And it's not their fault, because if misinformation is being put out to the public, it's not their fault that they believe it. So I thought, gosh, wouldn't that be great if I could, do a classroom on wheels? That was my thought. Like, let's just go see these places that Marilyn actually was and bring history to life. And because growing up in Southern California, that was one of my favorite things to do, was go sightseeing basically in my own backyard and seeing where Marilyn was and other people too. And so I thought, I'll just start a tour company. How hard can it be? And then I realized almost right away, well, I know a lot about the Doors too. So I'll do a tour about the Doors. And again, how hard can it be to set up a business? And then I was thinking, well, gosh, what can I call this company that fits Marilyn and fits the Doors? There's nothing. And one day I was driving in the car and the song LA Woman came on the radio, and there it was. Like, it was just handed to me.
Yeah.
So LA Woman Tours.
That first Doors album, oh my God, it's one of my top 3 desert island rock albums.
Definitely those. I like the Doors, but yeah, that first album will change your life if you open your heart.
Yeah.
And listen to it. You're in for a real treat.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic album. And Scott Michaels drove your bus originally?
Yeah. I started. I was renting a bus, and that was hard because they're kind of big, and even the smaller buses are kind of big. And I got to know Scott once I started the tour company, and I worked up the courage to ask him, what would you think about if I subleased or rented a van from you? And he was game, and he actually drove the van himself, not one of his drivers, and we had the best time. It was so great working with him. I love him a lot. Both the Scotts in my life, Scott Fortner, who I host the podcast with, and Scott Michaels.
Yeah, I met Scott.
I'm really lucky.
I met Scott through Terry Bolo, who's one of my closest friends in the world.
Oh, yeah. She worked in the shop. Yeah. I love Terry.
She's been on the podcast 9 times. I just had her back last week. And the first time I was at Dearly Departed, I got PTSD from seeing Jane Mansfield's car because I had a car crash. And
Oh.
Terry felt so bad because she's like, I'm sorry I didn't let you know about that. I'm like, oh, you couldn't have known, and like I didn't know, but I'm glad I saw it. It's just the whole time I was like, looking at it going, God, I'm so lucky I didn't lose my head.
Yeah, it is, to see that car for the first time is really shocking and really emotional. And I don't want to say I ever got used to it, but having been in the office so much, I did get accustomed to it in some way. You kind of have to adjust, or you're not going to be able to work around things like that. Like my brother's a police officer, and you have to really adjust your mindset to see certain things every day. And the car was really hard to see for the first time.
Yeah, and I interviewed Matt Simber last summer.
Oh yeah, he knows April too.
Yeah, and that was pretty interesting. And my friend interviewed him like a couple weeks later and stuff. I'm glad, because there was like no podcast interviews with Matt Simber out there. It's like there needs to be. The guy's got stories.
Yeah.
So how often do you do those tours?
Well, since COVID, I haven't done them, so I'm going to try to bring them back this summer, and we'll see how it goes. But before, I would do a tour for Marilyn's birthday in June, a tour for her memorial in August. I would do the Jean Harlow one in June, and then the Doors tour would be sometime in July for Jim's memorial, and then the rock and roll tour whenever it fit into Scott's schedule. But he lives in Palm Springs now, so he's online now.
Oh yes, his YouTube channel. I'm a subscriber.
Yeah, I am too.
I wish he took kind of a less tabloidy approach to like naming the videos, but other than that, I love what he does.
Yeah, and he's a good guy. He's one of my best friends, but having worked so closely with him for so long, like he loves these people. He loves what he does, and he has every good intention in his heart. Like, he really subscribes to the old adage, like, people die twice. They die once physically, and then they die for the last time. They die when you stop saying their name. So if you continue to speak their name, they don't really die, and they continue to live on. And that is kind of what he does. He remembers people, and he will say he makes a cheap joke sometimes, and he admits to that, but everything he does is coming from love, and he's kind of my mentor, Yeah. So
Same here. That's my approach. I mean, I remember so many people from my childhood that I've gotten to interview and stuff, and I make jokes as well, and my sense of humor is very body, and
yeah, mine too.
people like what I do. I know, obviously, we're both friends with Pleasant, so you can't not have a body sense of humor. But it's all coming from a place of love, and just like him, I have my critics and my skeptics, but I do what I do.
Well, yeah, and you're always going to have that, and all you can do is be sincere and be authentic, and the right people will find you. And if you were trying to be something you weren't, that's when you run into trouble.
Yes. Oh, I can't stand that. Going back to that Nightmare Alley thing that we talked about earlier. Yeah, it drives me crazy. It really does.
Yeah.
And you're a cat person.
Yeah.
Same here.
I have 3 right now. I had a dog too. She passed away in April, Gidget. So I'm also a dog person. But
I love that, Gidget.
Yeah. She looked a little like Toto. But I have a cat, and he's what I call my real cat, Izzy, and he's named after Izzy Stradlin.
Oh yeah, from Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, and I joke sometimes that I'm trying to make him a celebrity. So that I could live off my cat. Yeah. But he doesn't do anything. So whenever I post a video of him or whatever, he's just doing normal cat stuff, and that's funny to me. I don't know if anyone else picks up on that, but and then I have two. They're now teenagers, but they were kittens that were in my backyard. They're litter mates.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually Mama Cat just went on her way, and I had these two kittens in the backyard, and I had every intention of, trying to get a rescue to come out and get them, but everyone I called or emailed said we're at capacity. So yada, yada, yada. I have two more cats. So now I have 3 cats. And they are George Washington and Betsy Ross.
Oh. I have a cat named Cinnamon. We've had her for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
And we call her Cindy Moo, and she's just the most loving cat in the world.
Uh-huh.
It's that you leave her be, she will just love on you when she's ready, and she's just so sweet. I just adore her. We have a dog named Abby. She's a little part weenie dog and part Chihuahua, and she reminds me of Toto. She follows me around like Toto would.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Where did you get your pets?
We were living in Redding, California, and the cat that came by chance. My mom was going to AA classes. It's sad for me to say, and she met somebody in there who had all these kittens and wanted to give some away. So she took one. And I was like, oh, God, this is not the right time for us to have any pets because, we're just, got this going on and that. But she got her, and I never looked back. And then the dog, we adopted her 2.5 years ago. We just saw like a Craigslist ad or something and got her, and we just adore her.
Yeah. They add so much to your life.
They do, I look back and I go, oh God, why did I say I didn't want pets at that time?
That's how it always is. I didn't want 2 kittens, but they're here, and now I can't picture the house without them.
Well, my issue with the dog was because I was like, oh God, is the dog going to start barking while I'm in the middle of a podcast? And it has happened a couple of times. And I listened back later and I'm like, oh God, you can hear the dog barking in the background.
But anyone who has a dog knows,
mm-hmm.
And I think they get it. And anyone worth knowing understands that, pets just kind of add to the podcast when they bark or meow.
Absolutely. So we got to play my secret silly game. This is a series of silly slumber party questions. It's no winner lose. It's just pure fun.
Okay.
How the game works is I ask you the question, you answer it, then you ask me that exact same question and I answer it. And feel free to comment on the answers because they might be funny. Okay. Elisa, are you ticklish?
Yes. Are you ticklish?
Yes. And if you tickle me without warning, I might hit you in the groin.
Okay. I'm kind of aerodynamic, so that won't be as bad as if you got hit in the groin.
Is your belly button an innie or an outie?
Innie. What about you?
Same, an innie. What color are your toenails painted?
Oh, this is so mean. They're almost always painted, and right now they're not. So they're all natural. How embarrassing. How embarrassing that the plumber came and I didn't have any toenail polish on my toes. That's a 7-year itch reference.
Yep.
What about you?
I am happy to say that right now they are red, green, and white for Christmas.
Okay. My fingernails are green right now.
I don't do the fingernails.
So I at least have that.
I don't do the fingernails because I have a habit of trimming them, and I used to bite them when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
But
did you overcome that?
I've overcome the biting, but I have a habit of, because they grow really, really fast, so I just cut them, but I don't put any polish on it because I don't want to ruin it, so.
Okay. That's fair enough.
Yeah. What would you say is your best personality trait?
My sense of humor. What about you?
Same here. I have empathy and I have no filter because I'm a Gemini.
I have a lot of empathy too. I'm an Aquarius.
Yeah, my mom, she's like the first day of Pisces, or one of the first days of Pisces, February
Mm-hmm.
21st. I think she has a little bit of Aquarius in her. According to my Nana, that's what she always said.
Yeah. My cousin's birthday is February 21st. We were born 8 days apart, and we refer to each other as that we're twins. So we call each other our twin.
But you're not Gemini twins.
No.
Yeah. If you could have anything named after you, what would it be?
Oh, that's hard. The sense of humor part of me wants to go the Howard Stern route and say a rest stop, but maybe, but maybe we'll go with like a state park or
a Marilyn museum.
Or Marilyn Museum, the Elisa Jordan wing,
Yeah.
or sometimes in Hollywood they have these squares, like they'll have a sign up that'll say the Carol Burnett Square or the Carmen Miranda Square.
Right.
That might be cool too, but I'm cool with like a state park, like a waterfall or something.
Okay.
Any of those, including the rest stop.
Yeah. And for me,
yeah,
I'd like to have a vibrator.
Oh my God.
I would call it the Tommy Chatsy.
So, I'm a big Duran Duran fan.
Same here. For
a while, they had a guitar player named Warren Cucurulo.
Yes, from Missing Persons.
Yep. And he has a vibrator named after him. And it's actually, I don't know if it, I don't have one, just so you know.
I wouldn't judge you if you did.
I know, I'm just saying, because I know people are thinking it, but I know this because it was a Duran Duran news item thing, but I think it was actually modeled on him.
I gotta find it.
You can double check. It's been a long time since I remember reading that, but double check me, but I'm pretty sure, because that's not the kind of thing you forget. So it's more like if it was true. So I know I read that, but we'll investigate together and you can find out if it's true or not.
Okay, perfect. And then my favorite question, is there a stinky smell that just makes you gag?
Yeah. I mean, like cat poop.
Yes.
But that's one of them. What was I thinking? Oh, there was something that was really gross the other day that I smelled that almost made me gag. But because I clean the litter box every day, cat poop comes to mind right away.
I gotta do that today, and it's worth.
Yeah, me too.
It's worth having Cinnamon hug my leg because she doesn't have to smell her own shit anymore.
Well, yeah, and it's so funny because, people make fun of litter boxes, and they're not that big of a deal if you like cats. But sometimes it's like, man, what did you eat?
Yeah. For me, it's either farts or feet.
Feet can get pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty bad. So, real quick, how often does All Things Marilyn come out?
Lately, it's just been, whenever we have time. We both have jobs and that kind of thing. So, we have a couple planned and a couple interviews planned. So, I hate to say it, but it's just kind of whenever we can right now.
And Real Norma Jean is available on Amazon, and you have a website?
Yeah, it's Hello Norma Jean, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And my website, it needs to be updated, so Hello Norma Jean's not on there, but it's ElisaJordanLA.com.
Yes, Hello Norma Jean. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say Real Norma Jean.
It's okay.
Elisa, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like
thank you for having me.
I feel like I've made a new friend, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside because it's Christmas time.
Yeah. It's a Christmas miracle.
I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year.
You too.
And be safe out there.
You too. Thank you so much again for having me.
My pleasure. Okay.
Take care.
Take
care.
Bye. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Elisa Jordan, ain't she a sweetheart? Oh my God, she is so freaking awesome. I love her energy. That's why I love listening to her on Pleasant's podcast. I just really, really, really like her. I mean, she feels. I feel like I've known her my whole life. You know, she's like one of those people. Go check out her book, Hello Norma Jean, on Amazon or her website www.elisajordanla.com, and go check out her podcast, All Things Marilyn, on all the podcasting platforms. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.